I'm starting to think about my Christmas ornament series for this year. And one that I'd like to do is a fireplace. And I was looking for glass that looked like stone and found this amazing piece. I don't have a lot of it. Obviously, it was scrap that I purchased. But won't that make gorgeous stones? So I have 3 pieces, 2 reds and an orange, which are going to be fire for the fireplace. I'm going to cut those on the Taurus saw. This is the base, my wooden mantle. And this is what I've found, and this is what I've cut for stone. They're 3/8 of an inch strips, and I'm going to cut them into rectangles and then nip around the edge so it has more of a stone look. I love this stone. I think it's going to be so pretty, but that's it. That is all I have in my scrap bin. Well, and this, but I'm not going to get many out of there. So that is up next. I'm going to take these little pieces and cut them to look like stone. So there's my little rectangle, and then I'll just do a tiny little nip because I want them to look like fieldstone. Fieldstone is extremely common in New England. And then I will build my fireplace with these little fieldstones. Now, I don't know about the tecta for the background. I probably should swap that out for something that's mortar colored so that the little spaces between the stones, you'll be able to see through the back and it won't be clear. It'll look like mortar. So let's see what I have for background. I definitely have to back it with something else because you can see right there, you're going to be able to see through or see between those stones. And I want it to be backed with something that looks like mortar. But so far, I'm loving this. Yep, I like the look of that much better. So while I would like a 3-tone fire, I don't want it to look like the house is going to burn down. So I think I'm going to go with just these 2, and I'm going to narrow them down so the fire is not so intense. I would love to put some firewood under there, so I may have to cut them down even further. But that's what the stones are looking like so far. I will go back and trim a little bit more to make sure they fit properly. I will glue them down with some glass tack. I do want stockings hanging from the chimney, so I have to make sure that I leave enough room for that. So far, I think it's very cute, although I'd like that mantle to look more like wood. But I don't think I have any more of this. That's what happens when you work with scrap. But on the other hand, it's pretty amazing what you can come up with when you're just working with scrap. I had to go back and check. This is Bullseye 2109, which is white, dark brown, streaky. For a minute, I got nervous and thought it was petrified wood, which has a similar look, but wow, has some pretty wild reactions in the kiln. So this should not do what petrified wood does. I hope. I'm going to use this to cut out the pieces. You definitely use a mask for this because it does splash water up into your face. So always goggled, always with a mask. Well, I'm not sure I actually filmed that. We shall see. But I cut out my little flame, and I have some pieces of firewood. And then this is the top part. And then I might put some little pieces on top of the orange. Just some little shards, because I did want the 3 colors. Actually, I think that might be more red. We shall see. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that, but I may add a little bit more detail on the top. I am loving it so far. So that's what I'm going to put up as an accent. I'm going to do a tack fuse so that most of this texture will remain. And all these little bits and pieces I'm going to save, because then there's another ornament I'm going to do that will look like a fish tank. And I'm going to need all those little bits for the bottom of the tank. So far, that's where we are with this one. The stockings, I'm going to use modeling glass, because I don't think I'm going to find any pre-cut out shape of a stocking that's going to be small enough. And I certainly don't have the skill set to cut with the cutter, although I could use the Taurus saw to cut out little tiny stockings. So I'll have to think about that. It'll either be cut out with the Taurus saw or modeling glass. So I got my 3 stockings cut, and then I cut a little white strip to be the cuff of the stocking. It was more difficult than I'd hoped, so I have a bunch that I don't like. Those are my 3 favorite. And now I'm deciding whether the stockings will be empty or if I'm going to put little gifts in them. I like the little package, not so thrilled with the ball. But I don't want to put 3 packages, so that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to play and see what looks better. If I like the stockings with little gifts in them, or if I like them just plain. I'd like some candy canes in the stockings, and I don't have any little tiny candy canes, so I'm just going to make some by melting some of these white stringers just a touch so that they form a nice little candy cane shape. You just have to be careful that you don't heat it too much. So I'm warming it, so hopefully it'll bend right there. Here we go. It's really fiddly work because they're so tiny. By using 2 pair of tweezers and just moving it in and out of the heat, I can get my little candy cane shape. I'm not worried about the length of either of the legs right now, because once I've got it in the right shape, I'll just snap off the part that I don't want. And to make them red and white striped, perfect. Look at that. That one might even be like, this might be a little long, but this leg is perfect. So I'm just gonna make a couple candy canes, and then before it goes in the kiln, I'm gonna put some stripes on with glass line paint. Okay, so now all the candy canes have a little bit of crimson red paint on them, so they look like red and white stripe. It'll look much redder when it fires. So the next step is to carefully move everything aside, clean all these pieces, and then start gluing them down. Oops. The one part I forgot, I need to put a hanger in there. So let me go get some nichrome wire. In order to make a hanger, take a piece of high fire wire. You're going to bend it around these round nose pliers. You want the flat part of the cutter toward the edge, so you make sure you've got a nice clean cut. And then if you leave it like this, it's going to slide right back out. So then you need to take these round pliers again, and you're going to make a loop. Hang on, let me get my glasses so I can actually see. So you're just going to grab hold of it, and you're going to make a loop. I like to make a complete loop. You're not going to see inside this because it's opaque glass, but sometimes you use transparent glass for these, and it's just a good idea to get into that habit of always making it something that is even and that looks attractive-ish. I'm gonna push in a little bit more. So if you were to see through that, you want it to be as symmetrical as possible. And now I need to make sure it's as flat as possible, because if it's not, it will actually spring up and work its way through the glass. So you need to make sure it's as flat as possible so that when it's embedded in the glass, it stays nice and flat, doesn't cause any problems. You want to make sure it's centered. So I'm using my ruler as a gauge and putting the wire right dead center. Because the glue is a little bit slippery, if you put a little bit too much, it makes it even worse. You do have to keep going back and making sure everything stays where it belongs. The hook is not going to want to lay flat, so that's going to want to shift, and you just have to reposition it. And then just keep checking as it's drying to make sure everything is where it belongs. I was thinking of putting a little snowflake in the middle of each stocking to decorate it, but I think there's so much going on right now, it would be more distracting than decorative. So this looks done. I need to just keep making sure that nothing slides, and it'll get a coating of clear powder because all these little bits would be inclined to jump if they're not held in place. So after trying to get that one hook to stay where it belonged, I thought, you know, this ornament is big enough that I probably should have 2 hooks embedded. So I took it back apart and put a second hook in there. Alrighty, this one is in the kiln, and I'm going to use the Paragon kiln because it has a little bit gentler of a tack. Sometimes the Gen Ken gets a little bit overzealous, even when using the exact same schedule. All kilns fire differently. That tends to be a slightly hotter one than this one. So here we go. Alrighty, it is the next morning, The kiln is cool. Oh, it looks good. It looks really good. Even those little tiny candy canes worked out.